Welcome to You Can't Make This Shit Up. I'm Kellen Clark, Joel Hoxley, and we are your hosts today. And today we are talking about the favorite topic of America, affirmative action. And what does the 14th Amendment, how much does it truly apply in these cases? This comes after a lawsuit from the Students for Fair Admission, the group that got the Supreme Court case. Let me pull up the name here because it's long. The University of North Carolina and Students for Fair Admissions Incorporated versus President and Fellows of Harvard College, a decision earlier this year that for the most part, overturned affirmative action. It got rid of racial quotas and using that as a differential for scores. But now the Students for Fair Admissions are back. This time they're targeting West Point, saying that the second part of their admissions process, where they do look at demographics, violates the 14th Amendment. Let's hit it, Joel. What do you have for me?
Oh, I love this group. I really do. I think they're just absolutely. For years, people have said that this was going to come back and bite us in the ass, and this is just a prime example. So the Students for Fair Admissions, their argument at West Point admissions process gives the unfair advantage to Blacks and Hispanics in the application process. It is truly, it's there. There's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. You take the first step in getting into West Point is you have to be nominated. So there's 535 nominations available. Each one of your congressmen, each one of your senators has an opportunity to do this. But that doesn't stop there, right? What's the next step? I mean, if you're enrolling more students of an ethnic or of an ethnic background, now I would put it more on the ethnicity than the national. Hispanic is not it's not like it's not white. Hispanic it's not the same classification. But to look at anything other than a person's academics, their service capabilities, I think you just take a step outside the box for a moment. And if you give somebody more points for something, I mean, I get more points because I'm a veteran when I go for employment. Now that's affirmative action, and I try to make sure it's front and center. No, they have to kind of drag it out of me. I don't know. This is a tough one. I think they're going to win. I think that affirmative action is on its way out. I think it's a good time for it to be on its way out because more mixed marriages, more mixed ethnicity. I just don't see, once the white population is the minority, are you going to let us in the white majority become a minority and then take advantage of this process? I guarantee you it's not going to happen.
Yeah, and what caused affirmative action to rise in the first place was because in the old days, Jim Crow law days, there was not the same opportunities for Blacks, for Hispanics that white people had. It gave them an early edge. It let them start sooner. It let them get into these colleges. It let them get legacies. It let these people get the social edge, which then passed on to their children, so on and so forth. So the idea when it came around in the 70s was, we're going to have to jump this gap because it could maybe fix it on its own, but it would take like 9. In the long run, we're all dead. At the end of the day was what the argument was. But when you take equity actions like this, you also take on considerable risk. Equity cannot be permanent. If equity does its job, it will not be permanent. If affirmative action does its job, that gap will be eliminated or at the very least shrunk. If anything that we do from an equity point of view does what it's supposed to, then it won't be needed forever. Eventually, you would have more fair equality opportunity. But if we do hit that point and the equity continues, then it becomes a force of inequality. And I think that's why a lot of people have taken issue with the affirmative action policies in
So,
recent days, because it is getting to the point where schools are pushing the envelope. They're saying we need 20, 25, 30% black, but they're only like 13% of the population or something.
and that's exactly so, Kellen. That's you bring up a great point because that's kind of where I was going to go with this. So, West Point has defended its admission process, right? By arguing probably the worst thing in the world that it is necessary to create a diverse student body that reflects the American population. And the school also argues that its admission process is fair and that it does not discriminate against any group of applicants. The first part of that argument is not true because if you want to diminish the black population from West Point, right? 13%, 12% at this moment in the last census, 12% of the population. So for every 100 students, you should have 12 black students. I guarantee you, if you go off of the criteria of who qualifies, who's getting, in on, their smarts and you're going to find that more than 12% are going to be black. And I think this diminishes the fact that you you still have 25% of your students, 30% of your students that are black. That's not you,
It's
West
not
Point
a
has
true
defended it
representation.
by saying it's a true representation of America. It's not. It's an overinflated. It's an overinflated represented representation of our school of America because you're saying 12% are black. You're putting in way more, almost 45% black. And so I see the only reason they win is because it can't be equal and fair. You can't say that this is doing one thing when it's not. You truly have no facts to defend the fact that that looks like America, because until America is primarily minority, that's not a true statement.
Yeah, and that's a concern, and I kinda wanna, pick your brain and see what you have to say about this. There is it seems to me from my outlook that universities, higher education, feel like they have to push their minority groups more and more and more. When I went to my orientation at the University of Central Florida, before you went, you had a little shorter digital orientation. In that digital orientation, the president of the university, Alexander Cartwright, flexed a pie chart to us to show that his school was only like it was just shy of 40% white. And that was the wording, that the school was not very white and that we are pushing as much diversity as possible. Why do you think that is such an important force in the eyes of the university, even when a lot of groups are showing that they're not okay with it? Hello? Joel? Joel? Joel, you muted yourself. Can you unmute yourself, please? Joel, you're still muted.
Yeah, I muted myself.
There we are. Good to have you back. Okay, so I guess I'll continue on. For me, when these universities feel the pressure, it's from like an imaginary, I say in air quotes, imaginary group, where they feel that if they don't continue to push their minority groups, that they will fall into unfavorable public opinion. That is why at my orientation, my school felt it necessary, in my opinion, to push it. That's why they feel the need to overinflate certain portions of the population over others. They are worried that as people look at the universities more and more common, that people look at these with more scrutiny, that people will take issue. Some people will take issue if their group isn't represented enough. So that's why they're trying, I
Well,
think, a lot of groups to go for a more hard equal representation.
it,
20% black, 20% Asian, 20% Hispanic, 20% white, that kind of quota.
but again, overinflation. You're overinflating the numbers, right? Again, you're overinflating the numbers. Your percentages. It's not a percentage game. It's getting people that are qualified. It's getting people that are qualified into those positions. Okay, when we talk about shrinking government and in the Republican Party, the one thing that it's when we say that statement, basically the Democrats say, well, you're trying to put more minorities out of work. How can you say that? Because affirmative action has filled those jobs, those government jobs, with an exponential amount of minorities. So if you say I'm going to shrink government, you're basically saying I'm going to take jobs away from minorities. So then the party gets attacked for that. But why are we overinflating those jobs? Why are we hiring way more minorities for those jobs? It's a double-edged sword, right? You walk in,
Absolutely.
you walk in to the DMV, and the majority of people in the DMV, 60% are minorities. Okay, well, 60% minorities and the majority population is underrepresented in all of government, then we have a problem, right? We're saying the government is run by minorities because we've set it up as we've set it up that way, and it shouldn't be. You still get plenty of people that would qualify for these jobs if you just open it up.
Yeah, absolutely. And different industries will always have different demographics. Teachers are primarily female to this day. It's not by the fault of school districts. It's not by the fault of their unions or anything like that. That was the females tended to prefer it more than males did. And
You're
it is different for college, like, flat out, it is different because that is opportunity for the future and for the next generation, and I do think that affirmative action was extremely important step to getting out of segregation,
no, listen,
and I
listen.
think people hold on to it desperately, thinking that if they don't, that they'll be racist for not.
Affirmative action, being against affirmative action, you're automatically called racist. But I think uh, being pro, being pro affirmative action when it was needed, and now is it not needed anymore? That's when we have to make a decision. I blog. I blogged the last 3 days. I got another one coming out today on different books. And if you read my blog, you'll know that in one of the books that I read, we do hold on to dead processes because we don't think outside the box.
All the
We
time.
don't have that. We don't have that. That wise fool. The wise fool is that person who's going to question anything. You and I sitting here questioning, is affirmative action dead? If everybody thinks the same way, you'll never get any change. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, and we have to kinda go back to when this first started to come around. What was the vision for it? It was it was
To
wasn't
integrate school systems and workplaces where
yes.
where you give people an equal shot.
Yeah. It was
Okay,
in the aftermath of Jim Crow. It was to break up the
okay, so
underlying
now,
culture that was going to perpetuate it even though the laws were gone. It was
okay, so
to
now,
step in and make that change happen faster, and I think it was successful for what it needed to be, and socioeconomic inequality is still a huge problem in America. Hispanics and blacks are still far more likely to be in poverty than other groups. And that is still a problem we need to face in the country. However, I'm not certain if affirmative action is the way to go forward. Many of the people that are the most affected by socioeconomic inequality are impoverished. You know, college may not be on their mind. The people that they benefit probably don't need it as much as they used to. Does it still help them? Yeah, but at the cost of others. And I think if we are still going to value equity, the idea of coming in, intervening, and trying to fix these socioeconomic inequalities, then we need to have a vision and we need to have an exit point. We need to know when it has served its purpose because it is a double-edged sword and it cannot last forever. And
Well,
that's my
let's
final
bring it.
word.
Well, let's bring it back to. Uh, let's bring it all back into you brought the social economics into this. Um, the government is designed. Our laws are designed to protect people, but they are also penalize poor. You penalize the poor, you make them poorer, and you basically create this problem. That's not market, that's not the market, that's not,
No,
hey, this is capitalism. It's totally not capitalism. It's simply
no,
you drive fast because you're gotta get to work. You're working 3 jobs and you're running late. You get pulled over. Okay, you get the ticket. You now have to go to court. You may have to pay the ticket. You have all these different things. That person couldn't afford the ticket in the first place, so you say, well, they shouldn't have speed. They shouldn't have sped, right? No.
yeah, you
The
need to go to
problem
work.
is the problem is you've got to look at the way the government system is run. You can't put somebody in. We found out a long time ago. You can't put somebody in jail for poverty and expect anybody to get paid back. And that's my final word.
With that, remember to like, comment, subscribe. Make sure to cancel us in the comments below or agree with us if you're one of those people. With that, thanks for watching.